Austin Seth, who lives around 100 km south of Houston, saw a Facebook shout out yesterday morning hoping for boat owners to join in a rescue of trapped and stranded residents. He was one of thousands of volunteers outnumbering the police who've spent the past 24 hours helping people from their flooded homes. It really has been a community effort. I spoke with Austin as he drove home today, his boat on the trailer behind him, and asked him how many people he'd helped rescue.
So yesterday, we went up to Houston and we rescued about 4 families, about 16 people in total, from their houses that have about 7 to 8 foot of water in them. And we were pulling them we pulled a few guys off their rooftops, and we pulled some people out of just chest deep water. They were swimming out of their homes. But we rescued 16 in total yesterday, and then a bunch of their pets. And today I spent most of the day getting the people who are planning on being flooded. Luckily enough, around here, we can see the floods a few days away. The river's flowing up over the land, and we can actually, the news and other weather forecasters have predicted that we're going to be flooding here pretty severely in the next couple of days. So we had a heads up. And so we're trying to get everybody out of the area right now before it gets too bad. But the people in Houston who I was helping yesterday, it happened overnight. I talked to some people that I pulled out, and they said they woke up that morning and stepped out of their bed, and they were in knee-deep water, and it only got worse from there. And but all sorts of different people from all different walks of life, really.
And Austin, how do they react when you turn up in your boat? What do they make of it all?
Oh, man, the emotions were very mixed. For the most part, they were thrilled to see us and someone that could take them back to get dry. Most of them have been wet for hours, and the water was actually relatively cold. And so they were thrilled to see someone to be able to take them out. However, at the same time, they were devastated. They were talking about people who literally just lost everything overnight, driving down the streets in the boat. All the cars are still in the driveways underwater and parked in their garage, floating around in their garage and stuff. And, no one saw it coming. And so they were just devastated, and a bunch of them were in tears. And it was a very emotional time for that part of Houston.
Your accent suggests to me that you were born and raised in this great state. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
Well, nothing like this, no. This is truly a disaster. I've never imagined it could be this bad. We saw some pretty bad flooding last year, actually, what was supposed to be a 100-year flood. And this year they're calling it an 800-year flood. It's something that happens once in 10 lifetimes kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unreal. There's not words to describe some of these neighborhoods and just how suddenly they were devastated.
Austin, there's been some strange, angry stuff happening in the United States, and this kindness of strangers, people looking out for each other and looking after each other, is a wonderful thing to see, isn't it?
Oh, it is. That was probably the best part of the whole thing for me. When I showed up, all the volunteers lining up to help. And one of the most remarkable things was that there was very little, at least the parts of Houston that I was in, there was very little law enforcement coordination, really, because there was probably 10 volunteers to every law enforcement officer, and so
wow.
They couldn't keep up with the volunteers. And honestly, they didn't have enough law enforcement to cover the entire areas that were being flooded. And so the volunteers really pulled together, and we kind of came up with our own game plan and set out to do all we could, and made it happen. I say we, the entire city of Houston made it happen. It was a joint effort, and we couldn't. Everybody played a role.
Where are you taking people when you get them in your boat? Where do you take them to?
That's a good question. I've had a lot of people ask me that question. So my main priority and the rest of the volunteers' priorities were to get them dry, basically. They'd been in their houses and soaking wet in deep water for hours, and if not the entire day. And So what we did is we all launched on an interstate. Actually, the water was deep enough on a major interstate going to Houston, and we launched on the interstate and then navigated our ways back into the neighborhoods. And once we picked someone up, we'd haul them back to they had a kind of an area where they were bringing in buses to shuttle them out to shelters, and also another area where if they had friends or family in the close area or the vicinity that could come pick them up, that they were allowing civilian traffic to come in and pick up their loved ones and whatnot. So basically, the volunteers got them to the dry point, and then either law enforcement or other family, or there was also other volunteers giving rides to people wherever they needed to go or wherever they wanted to go, as long as they could get there, because a lot of the roads are impassable, or they're not. You can't drive through them because they got water on them. So,
Austin, you were driving your boat along the interstate. It's just such a bizarre image, isn't it? Were you sticking to the road rules? Was everyone keeping on the right side of the road in their boats?
Yeah, it was bizarre. When we showed up, they told us, go north on Interstate 45, and you'll see where to launch. And I said, well, is there going to be someone there waving me down? It's like, no, you'll see it. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, just you'll know it when you see it. I said, okay. And so I started driving, and it got to the point where you couldn't drive anymore. And everybody just kind of stopped there and said, what do we do? I said, well, I guess we'll just go to work. We dropped the boats in, and we're driving down the interstate till we found a side road that cut into the neighborhoods. And, honestly, we were getting lost back in some of these neighborhoods because a lot of people had never been there before. And so luckily a few of us had GPSs on our boats, and we were able to mark our tracks on the way in and then follow them on the way out, and following street signs when we could see them, but most of them were underwater.
Austin Seth, who had been taking his boat along the interstate, turning into suburbs and subdivisions to save people who really were underwater.